that. It might be in name only. Evan Lazar, CLNS Media here. And this is what happened, which is next to nothing. Patriots swung a move, might have been the only team to swing a move. Thoughts of a massive rebuild, trading Stephon Gilmore, Joe Thuney, stockpiling draft picks. That didn't happen. Patriots, what's amazing, and again, we'll fill in people with what did happen. They did trade for Isaiah Ford from the Dolphins. We'll get into him a little bit and what he does. This is very much the type of trade that Bill Belichick would make, Evan, if the team was in contention, which is low cost, possibly high reward, fill a need, not give up any real assets here, see if you can bring a guy to plug a hole here on your team. And that's kind of what they did, which signals to fans they're still playing to win to an extent. So let's I'll ask you, what do you think the most interesting thing here is, what they did do or what they didn't do?
I would say more so what they didn't do, but I don't think I'm overly surprised that they didn't do anything of note at the deadline, because I feel like the next 9 games for the Patriots, whether it's about making the playoffs or not, is mostly about evaluating this roster moving forward. And I agree with Belichick in the fact that if you go forward and you trade Gilmore and you trade Joe Thuney and maybe you trade an Edelman or a Devin McCourty or someone like that as well, and you have a full-on fire sale, right? I just don't know how you then properly evaluate the rest of your roster throughout the rest of the year. You know, if you put Jared Stidham, let's say you want to get him some run towards the end of the season to see what you got there, and you put him in there without Thuney anymore at left guard, with these receivers that you have around him that nobody can win with, whether it's Cam or Tom Brady, then what are we really going to learn about Stidham in that time? And similarly, if you take Gilmore out of the defense, now, what are we really going to learn about Josh Uche or Anthony Jennings or Kyle Duggar, whatever the case may be? So I sort of understand wanting to keep the rest of the foundation around them so that they can sort of be able to have a little bit of semblance of respectability and competition throughout the rest of the year. I don't know if there's a ton of precedent of truly tanking like Philadelphia Sixers style in the NFL and having that work. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's really the only team that's ever done it in recent memory successfully, I guess, is the Indianapolis Colts. But they tanked knowing that Andrew Luck was going to fall into their laps with the #1 pick.
They also were forced into tank mode because Peyton Manning had to miss the year with his neck fusion surgery, and so they were bad anyway, and it just kind of happened that way. So that might have not been the case had Manning been healthy enough to play. So yeah, obviously that worked. You've seen other teams stockpile picks, and you're right. This isn't a path to success. You're not bringing in that one play. Again, people might look to Lawrence or a savior quarterback, particularly if you're the Patriots right now, and think, I don't know, maybe. And realistically, if you want to land one of those blue chippers, you got to get into the top 6 picks in order to do that. And I just, as bad as the Patriots have been, or as limited as this roster has been, I think they'd really have to puke all over themselves the rest of the year to be that bad. I think even worst case scenario, you're looking at a team drafting 9, 10, 11, 12. And again, that's where they are. I don't think you were getting a top 5 pick for Gilmore or anything like that. So that's what happened. So let's talk about it. The wisdom behind not trading Stephon Gilmore and Joe Thuney. Now, the reports early, as Diana Rossini from ESPN had reported that the Patriots were looking for a first-round pick and a player for Gilmore, which is a lot given his position and age. 30-plus-year-old cornerback. These guys don't necessarily, because he's looking for that next contract. So any team that trades for him has to give up assets and pay the money. It's not surprising nobody came knocking for that. I would say I am somewhat surprised there wasn't something close enough for the Patriots to consider. We might learn more as time goes on. Maybe they turn down a second. We'll see. But as of right now, it looked like they set the bar really high with the idea that probably nobody's going to take this. If somebody really wanted to, great. But it seems like they really weren't intent on trading Gilmore.
They weren't intent on trading Gilmore now. I think when we get to the draft, if we get to March, it's a much different conversation. I think the biggest thing that what you're seeing is talking to people around the league and listening to others is that the unknown about the salary cap next year and how the whole league is going to react to the way that revenue is processed through with the coronavirus. It basically put a hold on any sort of big ticket players moving this deadline, because teams were reluctant to give up big draft capital for a player because you're not going to give up 4 or 5 years of team control when you're not 100% certain about what the landscape of the league is going to look like, and if you're going to be able to afford a player or want to be able to pay a player high, market value, top dollar contract. And I don't know if there was any sort of real inclination that anyone of any value was going to move at this deadline. I know the Packers and the Texans discussed a Will Fuller trade, but the Packers, ultimately wouldn't match their price on that move either. So a lot of that going around the league where the asking price for veterans was extremely high. Teams that have the draft picks that are looking to add the veterans don't want to give up the draft picks in an uncertain year with the salary cap, and nobody wants to commit to paying anybody, especially an older veteran player like Gilmore, in a long-term contract or a big money dollar amount next season. So I think that's a really big part of this, is that the entire market was soft and there really wasn't much going on in the entire league. And you're not going to just trade Gilmore just to trade Gilmore.
Well, I will say, while you're not going to trade Gilmore just to trade him, because he does have value and he can be traded next year when there is less uncertainty, the Tooney thing to me was actually a bit surprising, because while you might get a compensatory pick in the 3rd round range for Tooney if you let him walk in the offseason, it stands to reason that you're also, based on the amount of cap space you're going to have next year, sign other free agents. And therefore, there could be, it's to me, the Tooney thing, I think they could have theoretically taken something there, because nobody has to worry about signing him long term at this point. And an offensive line needy team might have taken a swing. So I actually thought that was possible, if not necessarily likely, but possible.
I think the biggest thing with Tooney, though, is that if you're a team that's going to acquire him for a high-end pick, a second rounder, let's say, because you're not going to get a first rounder for a guard mostly. If you're going to trade a second rounder for Tooney, then you're probably assuming that you're then going to extend Tooney beyond this season. I don't think you pay up a second rounder for 8-9 games, half a season of a player. So then you're giving up the second round pick, and then you're giving up 15-16 million a year to Tooney. So that, to me, I don't know if it's one of those things that's not necessarily smart business, right? You can just wait till free agency in March, sign Tooney for absolutely nothing in terms of compensation, and just sign him to the contract you were going to sign him to anyways if you made the trade for him. So again, I really come back to, though, that this was a quiet deadline all around. There was no chatter. Now, normally, and I'm not shooting my own horn, but normally, a couple of days before the deadline, you start to hear inklings of like little things. Like we heard Mohamed Sanu might be coming here last year before it happened, or you just hear sort of little inklings of trades that might happen, and all of it seemed very media fabricated this year, and none of it, I don't think, was ever really that far down the line in terms of big ticket, big name, blue chip type players moving at this line.
No, and again, Fuller was that name, and even Fuller himself tweeted that little rascals emoji, tapping the fingers, waiting for something to happen. So I think even he was looking, around, and the Packers thing, I'm sure, would have been very enticing for him. And it didn't happen. So a lot of movement at all. So what we do have, and we'll eventually get questions. We see a few piling up here, Evan. So a lot of people want your insight on things here. Let's quickly get the scouting report on Isaiah Ford, who again is kind of a more of a slot type, not a burner. He's a 4'6", 140 guy to go along with Jacoby Myers 4'6", 3. So not a lot of juice back there, but a guy who, again, based on everything we're reading here, is there's traffic in the slot in Miami, so this frees up the opportunity for them to play other people, and actually does fill a need here, and he could step in here and help. I mean, certainly can't be worse. This also, again, with Edelman being out several weeks, you did need something here. So your thoughts on what you know about this player, whether the college tape, anything you've seen from him?
Well, in college, he was more of an outside guy. He was kind of high point, contested catch, strong hands along the sidelines, stop down routes and box guys out, use his frame. And I think that that's the one thing, because I do think that a lot of people are going to draw Jacoby Myers type comparisons because of his role in that Miami offense. But I think the difference between a guy like Isaiah Ford and Jacoby Myers is that Myers is a little bit smoother, a little bit better of a route runner, I think, in terms of quickness at the top of the route. But Ford is a little bit stockier and a little bit sturdier and has that ability to box out and really battle at the catch point. And he's a tough guy that will go in there and do that dirty work between the numbers. Not saying Myers isn't a tough guy, but that's just not really his game. So I think the one thing when you looked at that game against Buffalo, where they did throw the ball, relatively speaking, with pretty good, efficiency for them, at least by their standards, they didn't have anybody that a big-bodied wideout that they could throw the ball to. Now, Ford is not 6'4", but he's at least a little bit stockier than the other options, like a Damiere Byrd or like a Myers or like a Gunnar Olszewski. And if you assume that Harry is still in concussion protocol and you're not sure when he's going to get out of concussion protocol, you already don't have Julian Edelman for a couple of weeks. They needed a body. They got a body. And I think Ford is the type of guy that really, towards the end of last year, he killed the Patriots in Week 17 in that game. He had 7 catches against New England in that Week 17 game. And I think that they saw him as a player that played in a similar system under Chad O'Shea a year ago, had some success in the Patriots offense. He knows the playbook. And again, he has a little bit more toughness at the catch point than maybe some of the other guys that they have. Because all last game, I'm thinking to myself watching the game back, they got Myers out there, they got Byrd out there, they got Gunnar out there. I mean, they have zero size. Just zero size, because they have nobody at tight end that's catching the ball either. So there's really nobody that gives you any sort of size or contested catch ability until N'Keal Harry gets back.
Yeah, in just over a year, you've gone from Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, and Julian Edelman to Jacoby Myers, Isaiah Ford, and Gunnar Olszewski, or Damiere Byrd, I should say, as the Patriots receivers. Also, Tom Brady. It's a different team, no doubt about it. So we think Ford can help some here with Edelman out and with Harry. Who knows? Beyond that, Evan, this is what we've got, and this is what we have going forward. So I guess I'll look into the chat here and see if we see anything of note. But anything else you want to add just in terms of the trade deadline and the Patriots before we get to some of the commentary?
Yeah, well, my biggest kind of takeaway from all of this and sort of what I'm going to write probably tomorrow is just, look, what do you do from here? Where do you go? Because you can talk
in terms of play on the field, you mean?
Yeah, because I can talk myself into, and me, I'll talk myself into the Patriots being relevant all day long. I can talk myself into 8-8. 7-9 and fighting for the 7th playoff spot. You can get there. And with their schedule in the back half of the season, they do enough things well, running the football on offense, using Cam as a weapon offensively like they did last game. And on top of that, defense with their pass defense is still a net positive when they're out on the field in terms of pass coverage. You can talk yourself into wins against both Jets games and maybe a couple of wins in the AFC East beyond that. And, you got Houston, who's not exactly going in the right direction. You got the Chargers with a rookie quarterback. Yeah, they have some tough games against Baltimore, against Arizona, but at the end of the day, I can see them actually coming out with the second half of the season of these last 9 games with a 5-4, 6-3 type of record in those contests. So my question is, and also adding on top of that, I think Bill Belichick is good enough that he can actually coach this group to that point, which is just crazy, right? I mean, I know that this team looks so talent depleted all up and down their roster, but I think that Belichick and the way that they schemed it up on offense last game and the way that they can cover on defense, all of that together, you can make a 9-8 type of football team. So my question is, moving forward, is do you do that, or do you keep losing? That's sort of what they decided, I guess, today. But I just think that there's 2 ways to go about this. You can put all the rookies on the field. You can put Jared Stidham on the field, and you can get those guys game experience and say, oh, we're just letting the kids play and let the record be what it is. Or you can actually go for this thing. And I do kind of feel like they're going for it a little bit. And that's sort of where I wonder, and this is kind of more into my brain and nowhere else, but I sort of wonder that gets into the whole ego thing a little bit with Bill Belichick, that he's not willing to roll over and accept a 5-11 season. And
Right.
I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to go about things long term for the organization and for the franchise, but that's where I feel like that's where we're heading right now.
As we've talked about after last game and already once this week, I know you discussed it on Monday. The desire you have to see what the kids have and what the roster has, so you can better address your needs next year, or decide whether or not you have to cut bait with some people. And I'm not putting Harry necessarily in that boat. I don't think you're going to cut bait with him just yet, but you got to see who can play on this team. You want to see the rookies. You got to get the tight ends. You want to see all the rookies get as much action as they possibly can. And in order to do that, you're going to have to live with some mistakes, which at this point doesn't appear like Bill Belichick is ready to do. And again, I think everybody agrees, Evan, Cam Newton is the guy they should roll with at quarterback. But if there's any inkling in the back of your mind that Jarrett Stidham may be a starter for this team, and Cam Newton is not your quarterback beyond this season, it's probably time to move on from him as well. If you don't believe that and you think Cam might be a long-term answer, or Stidham certainly is not, I can understand that as well. But clearly at this moment, Bill is still in win now sort of mode. Let's get into
and some I can't agree with him more on that one. Like, you're in week 9. You're not there yet where you're just throwing the towel.
We're talking
who knows? Maybe they could turn this around and Cam could start playing like Cam in week 2. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but you're not there yet. And especially on the defensive side of the ball, I think more so than Cam improving his game is if Josh Uche, Kyle Duggar, and Chase Winovich and all these guys in the front 7 start playing better, then they can start piecing this thing together on that side of the ball. So I think it's way too early to tank. If we're talking in week 15, 16, 17, where they're mathematically eliminated, then that's when I think we start having the Stidham conversation.
A couple of improvements create a trickle, I guess, up effect. I don't know what else to call it, but one little thing can beget change somewhere else, and then so on and so on. So right now everything is off, but you're right. You shore something up on the front 7 a little bit, you get some semblance of a consistent pass rush. You have some receivers who can at least catch the ball or get some separation. You start to clean a few things up. Things could happen. Plus, you have to take this into account, and we've talked about it before. They still have 2 games with the Jets, and that's the NFL. That's the NFL equivalent of signing your name to the SATs. You know, like that's just for free 400 points. It's 2 wins right there. So you take them and go. And then you work it from there. Again, you're going to look back on those close losses, the ones that Cam had the ball in his hands for, and they're going to burn if this team gets to 8 wins and think, wow, 10 was really attainable. But you're right. A turnaround to respectability is not beyond the realm of possibility. Let's get some questions here. I've got John from Twitter asking, and again, N'Keal Harry in the concussion protocol right now, but his question, why don't they target him downfield more or throw to the rookie tight end up the seams? I feel like we've talked about this ad nauseum for the beginning of the year, but it still is a question on a lot of people's minds.
It's definitely the number one question that I get about N'Keal is why don't they throw the ball down the field more to him? I think the biggest reason why there's no real great reason, because that's the one skill, contested catches, that have actually translated from college to the pros for N'Keal Harry. Right now, he's 4 for 8 on contested balls this season, which is 50% is actually, I know we call them 50-50 balls, but in reality, it's more like 60-40 in favor of the defense. And being 50-50 means that you're a good receiver in that regard. Why don't they just throw it to him down the field on a 9 route and just let him kind of jump over somebody? I think the biggest reason why is that what I just mentioned. It's reality is it's a 35-40% chance of completing that pass. Now, I would like to see them do that once, maybe twice a game, just to try to get a shot play out of it, because clearly they're not just getting shot plays out of just running their scheme with the playmakers that they have. But that's why, is because it's a low percent throw, and the likelihood of you completing it is very low. But again, with DPI rules being what they are, with the fact that they can't get any explosive plays anywhere else, I would love to see them just throw some jump balls down there just to see if he can turn the field. What happens when he does catch one for 45, 50 yards, where Cam literally just throws it up there and lets him play basketball, and he just rebounds it, that's a productive play for this offense. You kind of have to live with those. Now, in terms of Ossie or keying up the seam, I do want to mention
quickly, Evan, I do want to mention on N'Keal, I think also the reason I favor it, as you do, you mentioned the DPI. At the end of the day, while it might not be his strength, and he actually he doesn't play as big as he is, he's still big where if you're a defensive back, you have to work to get around him to contest one of those balls. So no matter what, it's hard to get around or up and over a N'Keal Harry type body without making some form of contact, especially when you're all the way downfield and you're turning your head and a lot of stuff is happening. So you're inviting a little bit of chaos, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because they are so predictable and they're playing things so close to the line of scrimmage there that you're right. You've got to keep it honest a little bit and take some of those 50-50 shots. I think possibly McDaniels, or they have it ingrained in their head where Brady just didn't like to throw those. He liked to throw to open receivers. And I don't know how many remnants of that still linger in this offense. That is so obsessed with not turning the ball over. But I got news for you. You're already turning the ball over. So might as well do it on a play that's tantamount to a punt down the field with the chance of flipping the field when you have no big plays right now. I think the risk reward factor with this offense, as you mentioned, is a good bit higher than with a Tom Brady precision offense, which is why would I take that shot? I'll just get there in 3 throws. And they're not doing that this year. So anyway, move on to the tight ends, because I know, again, that's another huge point of contention here. We had Asiasi last week who had a death in the family. He didn't play. Might have been a healthy scratch anyway, and Keene's not in there as well. So, again, people are wondering what's going on. We've heard rumblings that they're having a difficult time figuring out in practice and dropping the ball. But, again, you still want to see it, right?
I mean, I would like to see it, but I think the biggest thing that you see with Cam so far is that throws up the seam. He's had a difficult time, whether it's a rookie tight end, Ryan Izzo, Julian Edelman, N'Keal Harry, of reading middle of the field coverage and being able to make those types of throws. So I don't know. They did hit Ryan Izzo up the seam maybe once or twice on little pop passes off of play action. Those typical pull the guard, run the tight end up the seam. We saw it with Gronkowski for 10 years, but it's not. That type of play action pass has not necessarily been great for Cam over the last couple of games, and they've kind of gotten away from that sort of style. And I've seen him struggle with reading the middle of the field and taking chances in the middle of the field. And also, if you're going to throw that ball to a rookie, you better be 100% confident that he's going to do the right thing, because that's where the middle of the field is really where turnovers happen. So I get that I would like to see them do it, just because at this point, what do they got to lose? But I think that based off of what I've seen out of Cam on tape, I can understand that maybe that's not necessarily where his comfort level is 100% throwing it up the seam like that, especially to a guy he's not exactly familiar with.
Yep, fair enough. You know what? We got some interesting questions here, Evan. Like 4 people, somebody suggested it, and everybody seems to like it, but everyone wants to change N'Keal Harry to tight end. And it is funny here because it doesn't work, and I see you shaking your head. But every time you have a big receiver who isn't able to win matchups against cornerbacks, everyone's mind immediately goes to move them to tight end.
Exactly.
Why can't this happen?
He's only like about 30 pounds underweight to play tight end.
He's about 6'3", 230, 225. You got to be up. You got to be 250, 255, I think, at the minimum there.
The role that they want him to play, or the people want him to play, is more like a joker tight end. So if you go and you watch like the Giants, for instance, right, and you see how they use Evan Ingram as sort of like a matchup, move him around the formation. Evan Ingram probably can count on one hand how many times he's put his hand in the dirt and just blocked somebody in front of him on the line of scrimmage, right? He's a flex, and maybe they can get N'Keal into more of a flex role. And I think they have this year, moving him off the line of scrimmage a little bit, playing him a little bit more in the slot, and doing some things that are a little bit more like that. And I think people mentioned like Aaron Hernandez. Guys, go back and watch how quick Aaron Hernandez was at the top of the route. This is not N'Keal Harry is not Aaron Hernandez. He's not the same guy. Okay, he doesn't move the same. He doesn't run the same type of routes. He's not good with the ball in his hand. They're just different players. So if you go back and watch how they used Aaron Hernandez and how Aaron Hernandez was able to move and how fluid he was and how quick he was out of his breaks, it's a completely different style of player. N'Keal Harry is a vertical receiver. You need to get him up the field. It's just not anything like that.
Yeah, the other thing I want to point out with Aaron Hernandez, which again, just to talk about what a physical freak this person is, he was a smaller move tight end coming in at about 255 pounds who ran about a 4.58. He put up 30 reps in the bench press at 225. Rob Gronkowski put up 17. Okay, just to
He's a
understand
much better athlete than Nikhil.
what type of a physical specimen Aaron Hernandez was.
Yeah.
He was on another planet. Okay, and as you mentioned, his ability, his lateral movement. I mean, they're putting him in at running back as a different type of person. Let's see what else we wanted to talk about here. A couple of people talking about free agents in the offseason that might be available on the Patriots side, and I want to find the comments before I talk about it. But a lot of them were we mentioned Galladay, perhaps. Is that true? Is he free?
Yeah,
Allen Robinson. Of people
those are the two big ones.
Those are the two big ones. Of those two, we have Robinson, Galladay. Again, it's not good NFL business to sign these guys. Okay, there are teams who do this and splurge on this. The big contract free agent receiver. If you draft him and he turns into that guy in his first 4 years, phenomenal. That's great. The ones who go out and they sign these guys, it never pays out. That being said, you are at such a position of need here. Could you see any world in which the Patriots with cap space would consider something like this? And if so, who?
I do. And the biggest reason why I do is because of something that Bill Belichick said last year, right? And that was, it's very difficult to project receivers from the college game to the NFL game because of how different the coverage is in college and how different the offenses are in college. So first of all, with the coverage is the biggest one to me. In college, it's a lot of zone, it's a lot of quarters, it's a lot of don't get beat deep, right? And then that's sort of been the mantra against these spread offenses. That's a much different version of what you're going to see in the NFL, where coverages change and coverages convert, and you have man coverage and you have zone coverage and you have combo coverages, and being able to see receivers take reps, real reps, against college competition that is also NFL competition against NFL type of schemes, that just doesn't happen very often. So it does become difficult. And I know a lot of people want to say, oh, what about Pittsburgh? They're so good at it. Or what about, Team Y? They're so good at it. But go ahead and look at like the success rate of first round wide receivers over the course of NFL history. It's not all Pittsburgh and sunshine and rainbows. I promise you. For every single, Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, there's, a N'Keal Harry and there's a Laquan Treadwell, and, just go on right down the line. Even in the top 10, that ends up happening. So that's why I actually see the Patriots looking at it like that and say, okay, from a pro personnel standpoint, at least we can put this guy on the field in a similar system against NFL corners and NFL safeties and say he can win and he is a good football player. And I think that's the difference between maybe looking at it through the draft and looking at it through the pro personnel side, and why maybe I would see them going that route. And I don't know if they would in terms of paying top dollar for a guy on the free agent market, whereas like an Allen Robinson is going to be looking for like $18-20 million a year. I mean, maybe not, but in terms of going out there and getting a very team-friendly contract, like an Adam Thielen.
They tried with Humphries. Adam Humphries is right. Yeah, but it's those big sexy names though. The dollar value you have to assign to one of these deals is so high that it really does limit what you're able to do elsewhere. It's just never been something they do. I'll ask you this, and again, obviously the quarterback is a situation here. After a few weeks, in the offseason, it was Stidham's the man. We feel confident. After a couple of weeks of Cam, it was, oh, they don't like this guy at all. That's the buzz. And then it was Cam Newton after the Seattle game. Wait a second, let's extend him now. Now it's get rid of all of them and start all over. Now, what's the likelihood that they go back to the drawing board in the draft for quarterback? And should that be a top need? Again, this is Devin asking a question. If that were their first pick, would you look to quarterback?
I would be shocked and stunned if Bill Belichick takes a quarterback in the first round. And a lot of it, to me, it's a couple different things. One, I think the main thing is that a rookie quarterback in this system is going to have a really tough time no matter what the situation is. Unless Bill Belichick is able to really reset this offense in a hurry. I just don't see how you draft a guy like, let's say, Trey Lance, or you draft the Wilson kid from BYU, and you just put him in there into this offense, and you expect him to succeed on any level with the skill players around him, with the receivers and the tight ends around him. This is not a great situation to be stepping into as a rookie quarterback. So for that reason, I actually think it's more important from a team building aspect to build up the roster around whoever the next guy is going to be, similarly to like in 2001 when Tom Brady stepped into a team, and look, they have a defense, they have Troy Brown, they have David Patton, they have NFL veteran wide receivers that know the game, that know how to get open, and all of a sudden a young quarterback taking the reins doesn't look as bad as in some other cases. The worst thing that you can do is like David Carr it, right? And you just draft a quarterback because you need to draft a quarterback, but you have absolutely nothing around that QB to make him successful. And that would be my biggest fear about taking a QB in the top 10 with their current group.
I had this one come to me in a text thread, and somebody's just put it here, so I'm going to throw it out there. If the Jets finish as poorly as they finish and they win the Lawrence sweepstakes and they take him, and there's no question, Jets finish top 2 or 3, they're probably going to take a quarterback to replace Sam Darnold, which means Sam Darnold at this point is scrap heap material. Whether or not you keep him around as a backup doesn't even make sense to me. You really want a veteran presence backing up a rookie. So I don't know what they would do with him. What, if anything, would Sam Darnold be worth to you as a reclamation project? And we saw this happen, not quite the same situation, but how quickly Josh Rosen was given up on after 1 year and then a second year, a second team. Teams will pull the ripcord on quarterbacks these days when they realize that they drafted the wrong guy. And if the Jets feel that they have, he might be available. Again, I just don't see a scenario where the Jets finish high and don't take a QB. If they were drafting 15, 20 and weren't going to replace Darnold with that first pick and Gase was gone, they might give someone else a chance to make Darnold work. I don't think that's going to happen. So what would Darnold be worth to you, Evan?
Day 3 pick, maybe at best. That's you saw what happened when who was it that traded? Miami traded a second rounder for Josh Rosen, and we saw how well that went, right? I don't think he has a ton of value. I think when you look at quarterbacks like a Darnold, like a Daniel Jones, you pretty much know what those guys are because they have had a lot of opportunity to start in the league. So I don't know. I don't think he's going to have a ton of value. I also know for a fact that it's going to take a lot for the Jets to trade a quarterback to New England. You know, that's going to be a really tough sell for both organizations to make that deal happen with somebody, a position as big as quarterback and a top 5 pick in that, for a top 5 pick in that. And Darnold, that's a big trade for an interdivision trade. Those ones don't usually happen too often.
It is, but if you think he's scrap heap material at this point, and you don't really even want him as your quarterback, I don't know what the dead money is. I think in the last year of his deal, I think it's equal to his salary. I'm not sure on Darnold. And regardless, I wonder what happens with him in his future. Someone here is talking about maybe this is Tannehill 2.0 once they get free from Gase.
I actually was much higher on Darnold than most in the draft, and maybe that's why I'm a little bit sour on it at this point, is because I gotten burned about having him as my second best quarterback in that draft behind Lamar. I don't know. I feel like that those types of players usually kind of tell on themselves pretty quickly in the league, and you kind of understand, this guy is probably not going to be your generational franchise type of quarterback, and that's why the teams that have him are already looking for the greener pastures. They're already looking for somebody better.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, what you were saying earlier, bringing in a rookie receiver here with these weapons might be tough. The one difference with the Patriots is having some sort of consistency in the offensive line. I think quarterbacks tend to struggle more when they come to the NFL and they play on teams that can't protect them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's tough, where as the Patriots have that, or more so, and are more confident in their ability to protect and to keep it simple, if not simple, to keep it conservative, where you could grow a little bit with the weapons, again, wouldn't be as big an issue. So I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility, because really nothing at this point with the Patriots is beyond the realm of possibility. Nobody's mentioned it in the chat, but I'm going to mention it. Prospect of you talk about people available in the offseason and the possibility that Jimmy Garoppolo is available. That's another obviously.
You're going to talk about it.
Here's the thing. I was clearly on the keep Jimmy, let Brady go bandwagon, not because I didn't think Brady was the better quarterback, but because I thought 10 years of what I thought would be top 10 level quarterback play would be better than 1 or 2 years of Brady even at peak levels, assuming a Brady decline and a Garoppolo kind of continued development. Garoppolo right now, sadly, looks like a jag. I don't know what his market would be after what he did in San Francisco. I can't see them picking up the option at what he's making. So he would be free. Is this someone you would think about? And we're getting some.
Yeah, they're already trashing you. Here's the thing. I actually don't have any issue with Jimmy Garoppolo.
They're trashing Jimmy.
Yeah, I actually don't have any issues with Garoppolo's on-field performance. I actually think he would be a really good fit, as he was when they drafted him and as they was when he developed him in this system. The issue I have with Jimmy is he can't stay on the field. You know, that's the biggest issue, right? It's not necessarily about his skill set or about how he can play or anything like that, but he can't play. The best ability is availability, and the guy can't stay on the field. So that's the biggest thing with me, is not necessarily about, you know, is he good enough to play in this system? Is he the right quarterback? Is he the right fit? Absolutely, I think he is. You know, he's got that quick trigger finger, that quick release. He can throw really well on time with anticipation to the middle of the field, but he's made of glass. You know, that's
Mr.
really
Glass. There it is.
Made of glass. I hate saying that because these guys are humans, but that's truly what it is.
Yeah, and it is true. There are some guys that there's some injuries that are freak injuries, but you do start to question time after time. Some bodies are just simply not genetically engineered. You know, they're just not made to withstand the punishment and the rigors of the NFL. And Jimmy G at this point appears to be one of them. So that's where we are with him. Let's see what else we have here. A lot of people showing a lot of love for Jacoby. I'm not going to get there. Someone asking why play Cam if he's not going to be the QB next year. I don't know if he is or isn't. I don't think that's been determined yet.
I think it's more about evaluating him the rest of the year. You know what I mean? Like, they need to figure out if he is going to be the next guy or not. And I don't know if you can necessarily project that based off of what we've seen in the first 7 games of the year, especially given the circumstances and what happened to Cam with the COVID thing and everything. So I think that these next 9 games are more about evaluating Cam Newton and seeing if he can get there in terms of being comfortable in this system, being able to, you know, execute the scheme and function well within the system and within the offense and do things. And that's, to me, more important than anything else, because they like Cam Newton in the building. He has fit into the culture of the Patriots very, very well. Yep. But the problem is that if you say all these great things and you act the right way and you walk the right way, well, if you talk it and walk it, eventually you got to produce it on the field. And that's the piece that hasn't necessarily always been there. So,
he's done everything. It's energy, get along with the play. We talked about the camp energy. Some people made fun of it, but the bottom line was there was a no fun vibe playing under the Brady regime, because Brady was dead serious about winning and nothing else. And you either got on his page or, you know, you were in the worst, smallest, coldest doghouse that you didn't want to be in, because he just had no time for you. He'd move on to the next thing. You had to get there, and it wasn't fun, and people were. So Cam brought a little bit of fun and energy, absolutely, and he's accountable. He says all the right things, but you're right. We're past that with this team. He's got to show it more, and certainly last game with dropping the ball there at the end of the game. This is an interesting one. I'm going to put it out as well from AJ on Twitter. Now, assuming there's no Fields or Jesus, he's
Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence, sorry, I was going to say. Yeah. Assuming those guys are gone, if you have a top 10 pick in your New England and you can pick top of the class at basically any position that you want, Evan, and again, we don't need to go through every single. But
is this me or what Bill's going to do? Because I know what Bill's going to do.
If you have your choice at, say, QB3 and top of the class at almost every other position or close to it, which direction would you go?
The guy that I want at the top 10.
Would you go? Where do you think Bill goes? Because I'm curious.
I want and will continue to want and continue to clamor and I don't even know if he's going to go in the top 10 because he's hurt now, but is Jalen Waddle from Alabama. If you want to change the offense and if you want to really add some speed and add that Tyreek Hill like dimension, then go out and get yourself Jalen Waddle, because he's going to create uber amount of separation, right? We're not talking about, I like Jamar Chase too. I know that people are going to be up on Jamar Chase a lot as well, but Jamar Chase
will take a kicker.
That was where I think Bill's going to go is my next answer. But the reason why I favor a guy like Waddle over a guy like Chase is because Chase, I don't think Chase is going to run particularly well at the combine. I don't think that Chase is a particularly great athlete. I think he's a great technician, and he knows how to play football. You know, he knows how to run routes. He knows how to get open in that sense, but he's going to wear coverage, I think, a little bit in the league and be really predicated on body positioning and timing and accuracy with the quarterback. And I think Waddle's the type of guy that you can put into any system with any QB, and he's just going to get so open at times over the top of the defense that it's not going to matter. So that's what I would love to see. Now, in terms of where I think Belichick will go with the pick, I think it's a lot about positional value. And I don't know if he's going to look at wide receiver or if he's going to look at tight end and say, okay, that's really where you go with a top pick. You know, it's not necessarily one of those positions. So I think that you might be looking at like something like a pass rusher, or dare I say a corner, or a safety if they have an impact player there, something that Bill views as a big positional value get, and not necessarily what we all view as the exciting times, you know?
Yep. All right. Well, again, thanks everybody for hopping on the chat. Again, this was a trade deadline special.
Can I just go one more thing? Because I've seen this a lot today, and I just want to mention 40 time does matter for wide receivers. Stop telling me that 40 time does not matter for wide receivers, because that is hogwash baloney.
Less so for running backs.
Right, less so for running backs, but what the 40 time allows us to do at the combine, it allows us to watch game tape and see, okay, this guy is really fast and this guy is really slow, and then we can be able to compare those two guys on the 40 and say, okay, why did this guy run a 4.6, all right, and why did this guy run a 4.4, and is that going to match up? So I'm telling you right now that the 40 time matters for sure. So don't sit here and tell me that Jerry Rice ran a 4.7 or DeAndre Hopkins ran a 4.8 or whatever, because that is not to stop. Okay, you want to draft fast guys, you don't want to draft slow guys.
40 times are high 90s fastballs, okay? Of course, you don't need one to be successful. Jerry Rice is Greg Maddux. Those guys are technicians. Right. They're masterful. They transcend physical ability with all of the things that they can do. But you're right. At the very least, speed puts other teams on their heels.
I will ask Jerry Rice if 40 time matters, because Jerry Rice was damn fast in pads when he was out on the football field.
Game speed.
Right. Yeah. And you can go ahead and watch the tape and figure out game speed. But then if you get...
We lost Evan. This happens once per feed. He'll be back in 3, 2, 1. Boop. Wait, there he is. I timed it. I almost had it on the nose. You were ranting about
okay, with N'Keal Harry, all right, in college, you can see a guy that looks fast, right? He's reversing field, he's running by people, he looks fast, but then he runs a 4.5, 4.3, 4.54, something like that in the 40-yard dash, and you realize that, okay, wait a second, maybe it's not necessarily that fast. And now we can see from the next step, taking that to the NFL, that his speed didn't translate. So it does matter, and it's just... You gotta. AJ Brown did not run a 4.5. AJ Brown was in the 4.4s. So was Deebo Samuel. So was Terry McLaurin, was even lower than that.
Was faster.
DK Metcalf was even than that. All right. So that's the thing. It's not necessarily all about 40 time, but it does matter. It does matter. I promise.
Yeah. I agree there. So that'll wrap it up here. Evan's got more stuff to do here, wrapping up the deadline again to recap for everybody. And thank you for joining. There's still a ton of people on the stream here. And thanks for the questions. And again, we'll keep doing this.
Me around 40 times because I went on a rant.
When you get worked up, Evan, they're going to come back at you. So look, again, just to recap the deadline, a small deal for the Patriots. They traded a 7th rounder, it turns out, to Miami for Isaiah Ford. Fills a need. receiver that Evan thinks can step in and here. The bigger news potentially was not trading Stephon Gilmore or Joe Thuney, which signifies two things. Patriots are still in try to win now mode, and or they didn't get value in return. They said the asking price is really high. So they have these guys as potential assets heading into next year. Certainly Gilmore, you could see some activity there in the offseason with him. As for everything else, again, we're preparing for the Jets. This is the most exciting week of the year. Patriots, Jets. No, just kidding. But it's hopefully a game that the Patriots can win and kind of get some things right and knock them back on track into respectability. So we'll have much more stuff about the Patriots and the Jets throughout the week on clnsmedia.com, on our YouTube channel, Patriots Press Pass. So please subscribe there if you haven't already. Follow Evan Lazar on Twitter, Patriots CLNS on Twitter as well for constant updates. And obviously, we'll be sending alerts out here if you subscribe to our YouTube channel every time we go live, and you can grill Evan about the ridiculous things he says and 40 times and whatever else they're adding you about, Evan. I don't know.
Yeah, Nikhil didn't come to a team with a true number one. I guess Julian Edelman just is already retired, right? Just over.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks everybody again for joining. We'll see you guys in a bit.